Hello YouTube, and welcome back to W140 Restorations. On this episode, we're setting in Project Heidi, and after reading some comments from my viewers, they said, hey, you should actually show what's wrong with the car before you start working on it. So I took that to heed, and now we're setting in Heidi. I'm about to show you all what we're gonna work on today. When you first take off, she starts going thump, thump, thump. So I know it's a driveline issue. I personally think it's the center bearing on the two-part drive shaft in these R129s. But once you get up to speed, it smooths out, you don't hear that noise again. So I'm gonna show you what she does, and we're gonna figure out together. I also wanna say thanks to everybody for all the comments, for all my subscribers, and everything about this channel. It is a wonderful community. Thanks for everything you all have done for me, for the show, and hope you all enjoy. All right, everybody, I'm setting here. I'm in drive, and from a dead stop, when we start to go about 1200 to 1500 RPMs, you're gonna start hearing a thump, thump, thump. That's what we need to diagnose, and then we need to fix. Here goes. That's it right there. Let's see what it is. Okay, one more time. I've got the windows up. Let's see if y'all can hear it more the second time. Here goes. That right there. All that thumping. We got to figure out what that is and then fix it. All right, let's hop into it. All right, let's get her up in the air. Okay, everyone, we are underneath Heidi, and a few things we need to do. Take off the muffler, which goes into this middle muffler. But before we do that, we have to take off this piece of cross bracing. The R129 has a tremendous amount of cross bracing underneath it because of the body flex. Put some penetrating oil on the exhaust, take it off here, and then support it. Get to this heat shield, and somewhere in the halfway point on this long run is the mid shaft, and that's what I'm looking for, is the mid shaft bearing to remove, and then the flex plates, both front and rear. You can't really see it, but it is hiding way up inside there. So let's go ahead and start taking the stuff off and get to the flex discs. All right, everybody, with the exhaust out, you can see these are the two hangers that I was talking about on the rear of the muffler, and I've reattached our triple square nut back to the brace that runs up to the frame. I found that there was a hanger right over the middle muffler section that held the muffler in place, and now we can see the first of the two flex discs. This one has some cracks in it, so we're gonna have to replace the flex disc. Also need to make sure I chalk it and mark it exactly where it is in orientation. Need to put the car neutral when we do that to take these out so we can rotate it. Exhaust in pretty good order. Need to take the two middle hangers out and then head towards the front of the car. I'm gonna have to pull out the oxygen sensors, and we're gonna have to support the transmission with a trolley jack. And we're not just gonna take this stuff out indiscriminately. We need to make sure that we support the exhaust because it's gonna be held in place by the manifolds on our V8. So we're gonna go ahead and suspend this stuff. We're just gonna loosen it as we work towards the front of the car. There are 6 of these 13mm bolts that attach to the shield It's a rather thick piece of metal that slides off, and I'll show you that there's 2 screws, and the sheet metal screws attach to this plate, which is going to make a noise when I put it down, as well as to this shield. There are 2 more bolts at the front, and then underneath here there's just 2 sheet metal, and this actually slides out and around, and you're going to be able to access and then see the midshaft bearing, or the center support bearing, whatever you want to call it. And lo and behold, we can see the problem, and it becomes very apparent just looking at it. Get a closer look. It becomes very apparent that our center support is shot. It is falling apart and degrading, and that's where the wobble came from while we were trying to drive Heidi. All right, next up is to support the backside of your transmission pan, or the whole transmission pan itself, to make sure that it doesn't sag when we take out this cross support. On top of this, inside here is going to be the rear transmission mount, and there are 4 total bolts that hold this to the car itself, and they are 17mm nuts. 2. All right, and she's out. All right, and there's the second one out. And that exposes us to the back side of the transmission, and you can see up through here the second of our flex discs. All right, and there is our second flex disc. This one looks to be in better shape than the rear one. No reason to not replace it. To get this far into it, we're going to mark the orientation of where the flex disc and the drive shaft attaches the back of the transmission. We're going to take the whole entire assembly out, and we're going to run it past the catalytic converters and take it out the back side of Heidi, making sure to keep it in one piece. The next thing you're going to want to do, and I can't really tell you how to do it in your own shop or garage or wherever you're doing it, is to put the car in neutral. And the reason that your Mercedes needs to be in neutral is because you're going to have to be able to get to each of these 6 nut and bolt assemblies to take the drive shaft and these flex discs off. And something else that you need to do, or you're going to hate yourself later, and I mean pay very special attention to this, is you're going to want to mark the orientation of the drive shaft to the bolt, to the flex disc, to the back side of the transmission, and all the way at the other end. And I'll show you on the differential that you're going to want to mark 2 spots on each end to make sure that you do not mess up this when you put it back together. These whole assemblies are balanced, and if you put them in and clock them differently, they will be unbalanced and you will not be able to get the vibration out of your car. So let's go ahead and mark these in their orientation. And that's going to be our single line mark, and we're going to rotate it, and we're going to make a double line mark to know that we can't mix up how it orients. All right, I've double checked. I've got the front of the drive shaft marked with a T for the transmission. The one in the back is D for differential. I've got a double mark and a single mark to make sure that I can't get them mixed up. And the same thing on the differential side. All right, everybody, 19mm box and wrench. And the world's longest set of extensions on a 1/2-inch impact wrench. Got my hearing protection in. And here we go. Alright. That'll be all of them loose. Let's go to the back. Okay, we're now by the differential, and taking note of kind of a rule of thumb. Anything that is steel, bolt or nut touching the flex disc as a washer. So you notice there's not one here. There's not one here, but there is one here. So the head of the bolt, washer, flex disc. The nut of the bolt nut assembly, washer, flex disc. So they alternate all the way around. And let's go ahead and get these taken off. And the last of the 12. All right. You see she's wiggly and she's loose. Let's take out our hardware. Since we got the rear drive shaft and flex disc loose, now we're going to go back to the front to the transmission side, loosen the bolts out of that one all the way, and then we're going to release the two bolts that hold the middle center section support for the mid shaft or center support bearing. And that's the last one in the front. All right, everybody. Here we go. We've got all the hardware out and slide, and oh, she's loose. Here we go. Let's go back and take the center support out. We'll take the whole assembly out. All right, guys, it's go time. I've got the drive shaft disconnected from the flex disc, disconnected from the differential, and as we make our way towards the front of the car, I have these bolts barely hanging on, maybe one or two threads. Everything is loose. And then all the way towards the front, you can see that the drive shaft is completely 100% apart from the flex disc. I'm gonna put the camera down because I need two hands for this. I need to keep the drive shaft together no matter what. I do not need it coming apart and coming out as two pieces. So I'm gonna release these threads and let the U-joint slip down towards the exhaust, and everything is going to go out the end of the car. So here goes. All right. Bolt number one. Bolt number two. They're both loose in my hand. front of the drive shaft is loose. Got real wiggly. Let's pull the rear end down, and she's out. Okay, here it goes. Alright, success! Out it comes, one piece. Let's see what it looks like. Looks like it's broken. Oh, what a mess. Alright, let's walk through the entire assembly from tip to tail, starting with this flex disc. Flex disc, and then the first part of the drive shaft. Yoke, there is a universal joint in here. Second part of the yoke, there's a slip joint that is in here that fits in the second part of the drive shaft, and this is the bad, broken, and busted center support bearing. You can hear it. Plus, you can also visually see it's destroyed. Second part of the drive shaft, and then another flex disc. Luckily, when you take the front and rear flex disc off, the entire assembly will slide out between the exhaust on the 5-liter, the SL500 model, and out it comes in one piece. What we're going to do is we're going to scribe one line down all the way the length to make sure we know exactly where these two go together. They're balanced. So when we put this back together, we need to make sure that we line up the splines on the yoke with the, see these splines? We need to make sure we line up the splines together so we don't lose this balance component. So let's go ahead and get off the flex disc and take a look at those. And guessing they're bad, I guarantee I'm going to replace them, but let's just see how bad they are. Okay, so I took my dead blow hammer and knocked off the two flex discs. These are original to the car, appear to be at least. Mercedes on both of them, so I'm guessing it had been changed before. The part number on these is 210 411 0215, and the three steel bushings that poke out slide into the yoke on the drive shaft, and on the other side the offset three slide into the back side of the yoke on the transmission, and vice versa for the one that goes into the yoke on the drive shaft and then into the differential. Work the same way, sending power to the drive shaft itself. And you can see these very, very hard plastic, but they're cracked. So these need to be replaced. It was worth doing because these are a fail item, especially if you're going down the interstate. We're getting on the gas pretty hard. So in addition to the obvious for what we need to replace on this center shaft bearing and retainer. So let's move these things out of the way and get to this. All right, might be a little bit hard to see on camera, but I'm going to point out that I have made a straight edge and have a straight line all the way through the joint. And when you slip the joint apart, you can see that I've marked it inside as well. So let's go ahead and take this apart. You can see that I marked the tooth as well as where it is in the receiver. So here goes nothing. All right, she's apart. That's the easy part, get them off. We're gonna have to get a bearing puller and go ahead and pull this part off because we're gonna have to replace it. All right, everybody, aside from the obvious things that we have purchased, we got a bearing assembly. There is a transmission mount and then the bushing cap type boot that goes on the drive shaft. Our parts just came in from FCP Euro that I bought, which were 2 of the flex discs and things that I didn't realize I was going to need. This is a transmission shift linkage bushing. I will show you that underneath the car. This was missing. So the transmission shift linkage was sloppy. In fact, it took about, what, an inch of jiggling around in there. So we're going to take up that space and put a bushing back in there when we get back underneath Heidi. But right now it's time to take off our old bearing. All right, everybody, back under Heidi. And while I have the drive shaft in the deep freeze, getting cold, and a bearing warming up, we're going to work on this problem right here. And this is the drive shaft linkage from the shifter to the transmission, and it's all over the place. And there is a little clip that we're going to push up and out of the way on the driver's side. And then we're going to put on our new bushing that we got and take all the gap out and all the play out from these pieces. Using our screwdriver to move our clip and get it out of the way, and then our shifter linkage is free to come down. And the part number is 115-267-0950. It's the automotive transmission shift linkage bushing. Reinstall our shaft. Put our clip back on. All right, make sure that's in there. And everybody, nice and tight. We are good for the next 100,000 miles or so. Okay, everybody, I have the part of the drive shaft, and the other half is in my deep freeze, and the bearing is in my oven. The working temperature is about 250 degrees Fahrenheit here in the States, 120 degrees Celsius in the rest of the world for installing a bearing using heat, and to expand it. And then for cold, it doesn't matter how cold you get these parts, but that's what we're gonna do, is use heat and cold to make sure the bearing slides on. If not, we're gonna take this part and use some gravity to tap it on. So I'm gonna go get those parts, and I get one shot at doing this. So fingers crossed. Oh, okay, everybody. Whew, I got nice cold and nice hot, and oh, look at that. First try. Oh man, that is awesome. Look at that, right on, first time. Yes, science. Look at that. Oh, and it's on there for good. Sweet. Oh man, that is awesome. Like a glove. That is amazing. And she's on there for good, and that drive shaft is freezing cold. Excellent. I'm gonna oh, that is great. We're gonna let that get up to room temperature here in the garage, because it was hot. I had it 250 degrees, and oh, that's awesome. I'm so happy with that. We're gonna go ahead and get our boot. We're gonna clean off both parts and put it back together, and then put our new support and put this all back together. Let's let this warm up. Actually, I'm gonna take it outside in the beautiful Florida sun and let it warm up on its own. All right, everybody, off camera, I put the drive shaft back in the deep freeze, and then I put the center support housing in the sun, and she is 100% on there, and you can see that she is seated all the way around. Next, we're going to make sure that we have everything lined up. I can still see my line markings all the way through. We're gonna grab the drive shaft boot and the center support. Prop shaft center support is part number 140 410 0781. I usually put all these part numbers in the description. And the drive shaft boot is 202 411 0497. Let's get this opened up. Get this on the drive shaft. And here's the thing, I marked this at both ends to know where it goes on, because once the boot's on, you're not gonna be able to see the markings on the inside. So, and there's a nice lip there, and we're going to put some grease on this and make sure it's nice and greased up before we put it all back together. There it goes. All right. Slide that all the way down. We're gonna clean this end off and clean the inside out as well, and then put some grease on it for the slip joint. Ooh, there it goes. All right, got it. See, there's my line all the way across. Just double checking. All right, I think we're ready to put our flex discs on the ends and put this back underneath Heidi. And the flex discs are 014 152 2108. All right, I cleaned out the grease for our centering bushings on the front and the back and put new grease in them. They look pretty good. No need to replace those. The seals were tight when I took them off, and just replaced the grease. I have our flex discs front and back. We're aligned correctly. I've got our dust cover, our bearing, as well as our housing all put back together, and have our rear flex disc. So there's the whole assembly ready to go back in Heidi. And while we're under there, in addition to the shift linkage, we're going to go ahead and change the rear transmission mount. Just adds a little bit of preventative maintenance. This is a limb footer, and the part number on this one is 212 240 0418. So let's grab our entire assembly and go ahead and put it back in Project Heidi. Transmission should be neutral. It is. And there's my mark. All right, I found my mark. I now have my flex disc in the correct orientation. I'm going to lift up and then get the drive shaft on my orientation. All right, that's it. Put my center support bolts in and start putting in our new hardware. Okay, now our center support is in, and we can start adding our hardware to make sure that our flex disc is bolted and correct. You can see the alignment marks on the back side of the transmission output, as well as the first part of the shaft here. So we're going to start bolting this back together, both top and bottom, because we're right there. All right. Two marks on the drive shaft, two marks on the differential. hardware goes against the flex disc, steel on steel, just as we took it off. This is exactly how we're going to put it back on. And then on the other side, a washer, and then a nut. And we're gonna do that for all 6. Okay, kind of tight quarters underneath here, so got my new hardware, and against the drive shaft, it's just the head of the bolt. The flex disc gets the bolt and a washer, and a bolt and a washer, and we repeat that all the way around. So we're gonna go ahead and torque these to spec. All right, everybody, let's go ahead and get these torqued down. I got my torque wrench set to 60 Newton meters. It's about 44, 45 foot-pounds. That was the 6th one. It's time to replace the transmission mount, the rear transmission mount. And let's get all that next. Let me go ahead and grab it. All right. Done. All right, transmission mount, real super easy, to be honest. 2 bolts in the back of the transmission, and then this one has 2 bolts on the bottom. But that's it. 4 bolts that hold it back into the frame, and let's go ahead and get this put back together. Just general maintenance. If you're underneath here, you might as well do it. No reason not to. It's just gonna save you some time having to jack up the car and pull it out later. The one that was in here was made from China. It wasn't bad, but you know, something about it. Might as well do a little bit of preventative maintenance. All right, a little bit of spray silicone on our exhaust hangers. There's 8 bolts in the plate. I'll go ahead and get it in here and buttoned up. The next thing after that is going to be putting our exhaust back on. Okay guys, just got the exhaust rehung, so we're going to go back and check. Got the transmission mount cross member bolts. Those torqued down. The new transmission rear mount. I'm just double checking. There are the flex disc bolts. We changed our little shift bushing. Got the little 8 millimeters, got those in. There's 2 more that hold the shield on, got those in. Got our mounts for our exhaust, everything tight. Got my exhaust bolted back up all the way around. Those 4 bolts, the rear flex disc, it's done as well. Double check. Yep, we bolted the top mount for our exhaust hanger there, and then finally the very back of Heidi. These 2 were an absolute pain in the ass, but got them rehung. If there's a trick to putting these on, somebody's got to tell me. I usually do with 2 screwdrivers, but there's just not a lot of space right here, so got that rehung. Let's drop Heidi off of the quick jacks and take her out for a spin. All right, moment of truth. Let's put her on the ground. If anyone from Bend Pack is watching, I love your quick jack system. This thing is awesome. I wish I had a 4-post lift and a 2-post, but if you're a mechanic that has limited space, these things are fantastic. So down she goes. All right, all the way down. I'm gonna go ahead and disconnect these and let's take her for a test drive. All right, everybody, we're back in Project Heidi. got her all back together and torqued to spec, and we're gonna take a little test drive. On the way to this spot, she is crisp, she is tight, no thumps, no bumps, she is fixed. But I wanna show y'all what she sounds like after the center bearing and center support carrier have all been replaced. I'm so excited about dropping that bearing right onto the drive shaft first time. Science, it's amazing. To heat up the bearing and to freeze the drive shaft for just to go clink the first time. So I was very, very excited about that. A lot more in store for Project Heidi. I've got some plastic welding to do on the front bumper, and stay tuned. To everyone that leaves a comment and who has subscribed to the channel, thank you so much. Love the community for people that love these Mercedes, both the R129 and the W140. And let's see what she sounds like when we take her from a hard pull from a dead stop. All right, here we go. Fixed. All right, and one more for posterity. She drives so great. Here we go. Done. See you all in the next episode of W140 Restorations.